Everyone, it's Emily Fox. Today's video is going to be all about the best translations I have read on Booktube, specifically books that were read by me in English that were not originally written in English. I'm being extra precise because my first language is French, so I'm not counting like French classics or something because I've read them in French. Only the ones that I've read in English that were not originally written in English. So I kind of tried to divide them by continent a little bit. So Asia, Europe, and there's, I think, one author from South America. So I wanted to take this opportunity to just try to give you my personal recommendations. It's also a good excuse to get yours in the comment section because I'm trying to not always read the same thing that we're seeing over and over again. I do get sucked into the hype because I want to know also if I'm going to enjoy these books, but I'm trying to find other things too. And I thought it was a great way to talk about them. So we're going to start in Asia because one thing that I personally notice is that I have often felt that books written in Korean, I did Japanese and Chinese, often one thing that they have in common is that I find it kind of dry to read. And I don't know if it's translation, if it's just me, but often emotionally I don't feel as connected to the stories. And I found that it can be an issue with stories that are supposed to make me feel like really happy or sad. However, these books are either the exception or they're the ones that it didn't really matter because either the genre or the story, it just wasn't necessary for me to feel that. So the first one was originally written in Korean, and it is Kim Jiyoung, born 1982. So this one is kind of in between these two things because you're following the story of this woman. It's written in a way that makes it sound like it's nonfiction. Basically, the author is using this woman's story, her life story, to discuss feminist topics. There was a little bit of controversy behind this book. I actually picked it up because Irene from Red Velvet got a lot of backlash. I'm not even sure she recommended it. I think she was just found reading it and I decided to pick it up, and I do think it was good. So you're following this woman. She is slowly losing it according to the people in her life. She did everything that was expected of her, and she is now married, she has a baby, and her husband feels like she's not really, well, the people in her life are thinking that she's losing it. So you get that before story, and then you kind of see her growing up and everything she has been through, and again dealing with sexism. I think a lot of people forget that Korea is still quite conservative, and I did find that the writing was on the dry side, but I feel like the ending kind of just explains it away or just makes it completely forgivable. So yes, I have to recommend this. I liked it so much that after reading it from the library, I bought this edition specifically, ordered it online because I thought it was really pretty. It's really short, it's a quick read, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. I recommended it a lot, but another occasion to do that, definitely recommend this. This was good, and I understand the backlash, but personally I approve. So the next two, I believe, were originally written in Japanese. So we're gonna go with the exception of a book that actually did affect me emotionally because it deserves the hype. This one, I read this one because of you. This is the Traveling Cat Chronicles. So I did do a reading vlog where I was reading a bunch of your recommendations of books that made you cry, in the hope that it wouldn't make me cry, because obviously some books do affect me emotionally, but making me cry, like bawling, it's kind of hard, but this one got me. To be fair, reading a bunch of sad books back to back was hard emotionally in general, but this one was cute, emotional. So you have this character who you're suspecting they're not doing well, and they have to rehome their cat, and you're just following them as they're trying to do that, and yeah, obviously that's gonna get you. I do have cats. I have 3 cats, but I read this before I had them, and it just ugh. So yes, if you want a book that might also break your heart, I don't want to say too much more because again, it's not huge. This edition is like weirdly short, so it's under 300 pages, even though it's short. So yes, this was a good book. Did make me feel things, so it deserves a shout out. And the next one is on the other end of the spectrum completely. This is The Devotion of Suspect X, and this is like a crime novel detective, so I feel like you don't need to be as emotionally invested, but mainly I really enjoyed it because I've read a lot and I just don't find myself enjoying mystery thrillers that are really popular. I find that a lot of thrillers are more like domestic thrillers, and I really don't care, but this one felt really unique, and I don't know, again, because it is from Japan. Obviously the setting is different, but the concept were just unique. The author seems to be very like logical, and it really makes it, again, interesting in a crime book. a man's unspoken devotion inspires him to cover a crime. And yeah, that's kind of what happens, but I don't want to tell you that much more because I feel like you have to experience it. And sometimes I feel like the back tells you too much. But yes, there's a crime that happens. Think domestic violence. So you have this mother and her daughter, something happens, and then this neighbors figures out what's happening and things happen. But yeah, I really wasn't expecting the way the book went, and I'm looking forward so much to reading more from the author that I bought 2 more books by him. One of them is another crime one, and one of them is supposed to be wholesome, so I wanted to test if I was going to have the same experience with, again, a Japanese translation. So I'll keep you posted, but I will be reading the other one during the fall because it's another crime novel, so I want to see if it was like a one book that worked for me or if it's just all of his books. I know he has a couple out. So yes, definitely do recommend Devotion of Suspect X if you like crime novels. And I want to explore more from a different translation because again, now I'm realizing, because there's another one, that maybe they feel more unique because they're completely different. I feel like we're all reading books from the US. I'm Canadian, but like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like I'm reading the same thing over and over again. So that's a good way to test it. I almost forgot one, Confessions. I don't own a copy, so this one is also a Japanese translation where personally I wasn't as emotionally invested in it as I wanted to, but I think the concept is super interesting, and it was also made into a movie, so if you want to try that, let me know if it's worth watching. But the concept, right up my alley. So you have this woman, she's a teacher, and she's teaching fairly young children, and she had a toddler, and while the toddler was on school ground, something happens and she passes away, and she's suspecting some of her student of being responsible, so she's trying to figure out what happened. And you repeat a story over and over and over again from different point of views as you piece things together. So the concept was really interesting. Personally, I do think that eventually becomes a bit repetitive, but I think it's just such a fun concept that is absolutely worth picking up. Again, it's not a very long book and really intriguing. So I think that more like horror, mystery, thriller tend to work better for me. Even as translations from Japanese, I thought this was worth giving it a quick shout out because it's definitely something. Okay, last but not least, we have this whole trilogy. The Three-Body Problem being the first book. I'm only going to hold that one because that's heavy. But I also wanted to give it a shout out because it was recently made into a TV show, and I did watch it. I did like it. I understand that people say that they made it a little too simple, but I feel like it just helps everyone understand it because this is the heaviest hard sci-fi I have read, like really heavy on like physics, astrophysics, but in a way that is really compelling. My main complaint about it is that the characters, it's a mess. The book feels very sexist too. And like, I know people are like, oh, cultural difference. I don't care. It feels very awful. The second book, half the book is dedicated on like this main character's ideal woman who's basically a child, and like there's just a lot of issues. However, I still gave them 5-star because the concept are mind-blowing. The best way I can explain it is first contact with aliens. Yeah, and the rest is really hard to explain to begin with. The first book, it feels like a video game. Yeah, they're trying to solve this video game, and then there's a lot of political intrigue that is mixed into it, some historical fiction in the beginning, and there's just so much going on. But everyone that has read this, well, if you've read the whole trilogy, your mind is going to be blown. Like, every book is just absolutely crazy, but yes, they're really hard to follow, and no emotional connection from the translation from Chinese, like none. So yeah, I do recommend it, but like it's such a weird one to recommend. But if you like hard sci-fi, you've definitely heard of this one. If you don't want, or you can go through these, definitely watch a TV show. I feel like they made the characters, people were saying yes, more diverse, but just more accessible, more likable, because they were not likable in the series. So yes, do recommend this. We are ready to go to Europe. I believe this one was originally written in Swedish. And it is The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I was really late. I only read it fairly recently, and I love it. I love it. The hype is so real with this one. At least the first book in the series. We'll come back to that. But it starts... You have to give it a little while because it starts with the investigation, and then you go back and figure out that this investigator, this financial journalist, is hired by this really rich man to solve a disappearance murder mystery that happened years ago. Essentially, they had this big party on an island that was just family and like a little bit of family friends. It's just really people that are close to him, and he doesn't want to pass away without knowing what happened, because obviously he doesn't want to leave his fortune to someone that is responsible for that. So you're following his investigation. It does handle some difficult topics, so definitely check out some trigger warnings, but I really thought it handled the topics really well and I enjoyed it. So yes, I'm saying the first book because I read the next ones and I don't feel like they were edited as well, but this one is definitely worth reading. And next we have Italian. We have My Brilliant Friend. Oh my gosh, am I in love with this series. I'm about to read the last book, the fourth book in that series, and I've been like pushing it back because I don't want it to, and I'm so in love with this series. I have talked about it a lot. I will continue to talk about it a lot. I don't feel like I see it a lot again on Booktube. I think it was more popular in Europe, so we're going to try to make it popular here too because it absolutely deserves the hype. There's also this whole mystery that we don't know who the author is. There are rumors that like, oh, it's the person that is doing the translation. We don't know. We don't know. But you're following these two women. It starts with them being much older, one of them disappearing and the other one deciding to write to her their friendship, their whole life stories. Then you go back to them being children, meeting up, becoming friends, and just trying to survive, really. They grew up in poverty and they're trying to not become like the woman in their life, their mothers, and just seeing the effects of these bad relationships, the lack of education, healthcare, and they're just trying to escape it. And yeah, they make a mess. They make a mess, but I'm so emotionally invested in these, so emotionally invested. So yeah, I have the last one, but I already know it's going to be 5-star. The whole series so far has been 5-star, and it's a train wreck that you can't put down. And I feel like what I enjoy is that it talks about everything. I really appreciate that the author doesn't shy away from talking about some really difficult topics, and it's just so good. Like, this is like the female experience, political intrigue, and there's just so much, and it feels a little historical fiction because of that. And yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, amazing. Next we have Vita Nostra, which I believe this was originally written in Russian by Ukrainian authors, and they're a couple. And they wrote the book together, which I feel like we don't see that super often. This is one of the weirdest books that I've read ever, but it's also one of the best ones, hence why it's in this video. And it's magical school. Kinda. The main character is on a trip with her mom when she realizes that this man is following her around and like starting to ask her to do things that she doesn't want to do, but he says that she has to do it in order to be accepted into that school, and she doesn't want to, but she has no choice. And like things get weirder and weirder. And yeah, once again, it's something you just can't put it down. You're not sure what's going on. You get to the end and you're like, there are answers, but you're like, I'm not sure I understand what's going on in the best way possible. And there are a few little time loops, which personally I'm a big fan of it. So seeing that included like 3 times, I think, in the first book, obviously something that will hook me. And it's a 4-book series, but only the first 2 books are currently translated in English. So I've read the first one. I will be reading the second one. But if you like Dark Academia vibes, really strange books, I would give this one a shot. It's an experience you have to experience for yourself. Yeah. Next we have The Wall, which was originally written in German, and this is a very recent republishing. This is a very modern cover. I believe this was written in 1968. Originally, it's a survivalist kind of story. You're following this woman who goes on a vacation in the mountain with this couple that she knows, and they have to go back to the city to grab some things, so she's left behind. And when they don't come back, she goes to investigate, and she realizes that she's stuck behind this invisible wall. And she doesn't know what happened, what's going on. She tries to obviously investigate, tries to survive, and she's left alone with only a cat, a dog, and a cow. And you're following her trying to survive. So it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, like really not. It's definitely like boring in the sense that she's trying to survive day to day, trying to survive however long it lasts. And yeah, trying to piece things together. The ending is a lot emotionally, and I really liked it. So if you like these kind of like post-apocalyptic, I guess, kind of settings, I would give this one a shot. But yeah, don't expect super exciting things. It's definitely not that kind of book, but I personally really enjoyed it. So yeah, The Wall. Okay, I was super precise in my intro because of the next book. I will take any and every opportunity to rave about it because it was my official best book of 2022. Every year I've been doing this giant turnaround bracket where I end up from 100-something books that I've read that year to 1. And then I proceed to spend the next year raving about it. And clearly I continue even later. And it is I Who Have Never Known Men. So I originally did not know it was originally written in French. So I read it in English, then I liked it so much that I bought it in French and reread it in French. but it still counts, right? It does. So, Moi qui n'ai pas connu les hommes by Jacqueline Arban. This is fantastic. Okay, it's again very short, so it's an easy sell. The premise sounds like a lot at first. You're following these women through the youngest one. They're 40 women. They are locked underground in this cell, and they're guards, but they don't know why they're there. They don't remember what happened. The youngest one doesn't even remember a life prior to this. And you're following them at first, and then something happens. The door is left open and they manage to escape. And that's where really the story starts for me. I do want to mention that this isn't a book about finding all the answers. It's just about questioning what it is to be human and what we are left with when we're just left with absolutely nothing, only hope, love, and just following this main character trying to survive the circumstances. This is the book that I have personally bought the most copy of to just gift to people around me to force them to read it, because I really like to talk about it with people. Again, it's very short. It's less than 200 pages, so it's an easy sell. And every time I've made someone read it, they do give it 5-star, but every time they hate me after because it is a little bit on the depressing side for a lot of people. Personally, I didn't think it was that depressing. I thought it was like beautifully bleak. I feel like there's some hope in there. And I just feel like it shows some beautiful things about humanity, but you will be left staring at the wall after you're done reading it. You just can't help it. And again, I've already read it twice, and I feel like this is the kind of book that I will reread every year or two for the rest of my life. Like, it is that good. And yeah, I can't recommend this one enough. Definitely one of the best one in this video for sure. I made a mistake in the intro. There are no authors from South America. This author is from Spain. So it was originally written in Spanish. If you have any recommendations, I feel like I only have Asia and Europe. So let me know, because I want to read more, obviously. But shout out to The Shadow of the Wind. This book was on my shelf for ever. It's been raved about so much, and I picked it up because I wanted to know what the hype was about, and then I just never picked it up because I had heard it was more like literary fiction and magical realism, which isn't necessarily my best genre, but I did end up really liking it. There's something about the writing that is just so beautiful. Maybe I need to read more books from Spain because it just flowed so nicely. And I really like the prose. I like the story. You follow the main character who, as a young boy, got this book from this library, and he falls in love with it, becomes completely obsessed, and then spends, the next couple of years trying to find more to read them. But he realizes that they're just disappearing. Someone is just getting rid of them, and he becomes really obsessed with figuring things out. So that's kind of the general theme of the book, but there's obviously a lot more to it. And yeah, I really ended up enjoying it. I do want to say there's more sexism in there that I would personally prefer. I did feel like the story and everything compensated enough that I did overall enjoy it. But yeah, it's worth mentioning because I tried continuing the series and I could not do it. But this book, I did really enjoy it, and I do think it deserves the hype. So if you still haven't picked that one up, I would recommend you do so. So this was my top 10-ish books that I've read that were translated in English, that I've read in English. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Now it's your turn to leave some in the comment section, because others can add them to their TBR, myself included. I would love to get more recommendations. But that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thumbs up, subscribe. I will be putting more videos that are similar on the screen. Definitely check those out, and I will see you in an upcoming video very soon. Bye.